Well, howdy, everybody, and thanks for joining us here on Expanded Perspectives with me, Cam Hale, and joining me, as always, sitting over here, slaving away in front of his computer is the Thelma to my Louise, the J to my Silent Bob, Mr. Kyle Filson.
Hello, everybody. How's it going out there? We're glad you could join us. This is Expanded Perspectives. If you're listening to us on Dark Matter Radio or iTunes or Stitcher or TuneIn or Podbay or wherever you're finding us, we are so glad you're joining us tonight. We're going to have some really cool stories.
Man, I had a really, really great time reading and doing all this. And like I said, one of these hits pretty close to home, so I think folks are going to enjoy it and all that stuff. And yeah, like we said, thanks for sticking around and hanging out with us. We're getting close to that 1 year mark, Kyle.
Yeah, we sure are.
We're bearing down on it. We've got it in our sights. Now we just got the front end lined up and we're standing on it.
Yep, we sure are. Well, tonight we're going to get to the wooden ship discovered at the World Trade Center, Karahantepe, some recent Bigfoot sightings in both Kentucky and Texas, and the story of the vanishing bird family. Man, and that's a creepy story. That's a creepy story, man. A lot of the stories are creepy.
Yeah, but that's a great book. But that story was in, but that is a creepy story. Just something about it. I don't know. Every time I think of anything like that, just something about the birds, the owls, all that stuff. That stuff's kind of eerie, man.
I like those unexplained phenomenon stories. Those are always so cool to me.
Yeah, I like that. Big fan of Bigfoot too, though. I can't help it. All right, Philly. This is one of those things that I turn to you because I know you've been to this site. I know you went up there during New Year's after the September 11th. So why don't you tell the folks about what they have found buried under the World Trade Center, or the remains of the World Trade Center? Okay,
yeah, this comes from NationalGeographic.com, and it's just that. It's about a wooden ship they unearthed at the World Trade Center site when they were doing some cleaning up. In 2010, excavators in New York's Lower Manhattan discovered buried deep in the ground the remains of a wooden ship. And according to the new study, that ship was built using timber that had been harvested from old-growth forest in southeastern Pennsylvania around 1773.
See, I think that's so awesome because they didn't even find it when they first built the towers.
Yeah, they just found it in 2010.
I think that is awesome that they've dug down there, and there it is. It's sitting there.
Yep. Independence Hall and Revolutionary-era buildings in Philadelphia were also constructed using timber harvested around the same time and from the same area. According to Edward Cook, a tree ring scientist at Columbia University in New York, and a senior author of the study, which was published in the July issue of the Journal of Tree Ring Research. The ship, a type of sailboat called a sloop, was likely built in a small shipyard in Philadelphia soon after the timber was harvested. 2 decades later, in the 1790s, it was deemed junk, and the ship's remains were used as landfill to extend the banks of the Hudson River and to create more land in the growing city of New York. How was this information gleaned from a heap of rotting wood? And I got a little clip here. So let's listen to that.
Yeah.
But it appears to be a late 18th century, very early 19th century coastal vessel. And what I mean is a ship that might have been a brig or a brigantine, two-masted ship, going along the coast from New York, maybe going to Boston or going down to the West Indies or Virginia, Maryland, that sort of thing, carrying everyday cargo, food, timber products, any kind of goods that might be available. And I can tell that pretty much by the construction, that it probably wasn't for going across the Atlantic. The most interesting thing is that we don't know much about these. The warships, the government ships, there are all kinds of drawings and models. But these everyday coasters at that time period, we've only found 3 of them, I think. We meaning the whole nautical archaeology scene. And we don't have drawings in any detail. You see these little images going by in a painting. So to be able to study this is very important because it tells us about everyday life at that time. It tells us about the 99.5% of the people who weren't recorded, and tells us the level of technology at the time, what were they using. Because these ships, or any ships at that time, were really about as technologically advanced as anything that a civilization made. In between the timbers of the ship, we normally find a few artifacts from the shipbuilders. One of them, which I kind of like, is a very well-used clay pipe bowl. It's all badly burned and obviously used quite a bit down in between all the timber. So this is probably one of the shipwright's favorite pipes that got lost there. We found birdshot, a couple of musket balls, and a small cannonball. So chances are this vessel was lightly armed. There were pirates around, there were privateers around at that time period. In fact, there were pirates right across the river in New Jersey at the time. They called them the marsh pirates. They're more like gangsters. The other thing is that it's at the World Trade Center. So we're 200 yards from the South Tower. So yes, we get focused on our work, but every once in a while you realize where you are.
So that's pretty incredible. I mean, I like the fact that they found artifacts in the boat too, like the pipe and everything.
I love the
balls of shot, musket rounds and things.
I love the fact that it's called nautical archaeology. That's just a hell of a cool term. What's funny, man, for me is you know how much I despise the ocean. It scares the hell out of me. But I love old sailing ships. I love everything that has to do with pirating, like the old pirate shows and all the. I love all.
I got a Pittsburgh Pirates hat on right now.
I love all that stuff. It's a shame that I dislike the ocean as much as I do, because I could really get into it. But the old sailing ships, he's talking about the double masts and all this. I mean, I could just picture it in my mind's eye how cool that was. That really is like a time capsule of what was going on at that time. I just think it's neat.
Yeah, and it really is neat. Now, the way they were able to date this thing is, of course, tree rings. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Each year, tree rings, they lay down a new ring of wood around the trunk. In good years, when trees grow well, the rings are wide, and in bad years, the rings are narrow. Most of the time, scientists use this information to figure out how the climate was and how it changed over time in a particular area. But it also gives archaeologists a valuable tool that they can use to date wooden artifacts by cross-referencing tree ring sequences from different samples. In the case of this World Trade Center discovery, the ship was made from hickory, spruce, pine, and oak. But Cook and his colleagues based their findings on tree rings obtained in planks of white oak, which were used to build the ship's frame. Now, white oaks grow throughout eastern North America, but the scientists were able to narrow in on a more precise location because they already had information on tree ring sequences in white oaks from North Carolina all the way to Massachusetts. That's all that was required, was the comparison between those sequences and the tree ring sequences contained in the boat's timber. As it turns out, the same pattern of growth variability in the World Trade Center boat was found in timbers in southeastern Pennsylvania. Cook said, there is no indication that timbers came from any more remote of an area. The oldest ring that they identified dated back to the late 1400s, during the time of Columbus's maiden voyage to the New World, and the youngest ring, laid down in the year the timber was harvested, dated back to 1773, the same year that Bostonians held their famous Tea Party. The later date not only tells us about when the wood was harvested, but it also provides a window into the likely construction period. You can make an educated leap of faith that the timber was used as soon as it was cut down, and that there wasn't any seasoning involved, said Martin Bridge, an expert on dating wooden artifacts from the University College in London, in the United Kingdom. With shipbuilding, you usually use the wood, that is, within a year or two of it being harvested because it's easier to work with. So it seems like the reasonable assumption was that the ship was built in 1773 or very soon after.
And then it makes sense, because the greener the wood is, as long as it sits around, it dries, it gets harder. Things like that would be trouble.
Yep. Yeah, it would make sense.
To work
you working with bow staves and things like that, the malleability of wood. And
you don't want to age them too long. I tell you, the one thing that got me, the one thing that caught my eye out of the whole article was that there is actually a journal published called Tree Ring Research.
Yeah, right.
That is, I can't even imagine that. I'm subscribed. I just got the newest edition of Tree Ring Research.
You don't subscribe to that?
No, but I think I might now.
Talk about boring. Borophyll.
Talk about borophyll. Yeah, I think the Tree Ring Research Journal, I'm being serious. I'm going to have to get one because I want to see what's in it.
I'll hook you up on your birthday.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Speaking of history, why don't you tell me about this Karahantepe?
Man, I always get caught up. Anything that's old, like ties into Göbekli Tepe or anything like that in the pyramids, I get drawn into it real easy. And folks, for those of you that are just now listening or have been listening and don't really keep up with a lot of that I'll give you a quick rundown of Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe was found in the early 90s, and it actually started getting uncovered by a German archaeological team in 1996, and it was led by a man named Klaus Schmidt. Now, Klaus passed away just barely over a month ago.
That's right. Yeah, I read that.
But Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey, and it's actually in a southeastern region of Turkey on a little top of a little mountain ridge. And the really cool thing about it is they've dated it back, the whole site dated back to over 10,000 years now, and some people have even pushed it back to what they want to believe, like 14,000 years. I mean, it's unbelievable the things that they're finding there. High relief carvings, big stone pillars and T-shaped pillars. Like there's over 200 of them in the area, and there's giant concentric circles, and there's like 20 of those buried all through this hill. And when I say buried, folks, it really is. They know that it was purposely buried, this whole site, but they didn't really know until, well, I say recently. They've been doing some studies and some looks around and all that, looking to kind of back it up, and they've come across another site that's actually about 23 miles southeast of Göbekli Tepe, and it's the Karahantepe, and they're giving it the name of the sister site, and they said it actually consists of more T-shaped pillars. There's 266 T-shaped pillars in this area now, and they all form parallel rows.
Now, are they sure they're certain that this is a separate site, or is it just a continuation of Göbekli Tepe?
Well, I mean, it's right now, given the distance that it's apart, they're saying that it's two separate sites, the whole thing, the way it appears. And it also, like Göbekli, appears to be deliberately buried, to be like an artificial mound. And they also think that they know that some of it has actually been buried through time, just from the winds and the rains, and and it could have covered things back up. But then there's also some things that they can also tell that it was intentionally buried by the way, I guess, the way it falls. There's a certain way that nature makes it look when it lies, and then there's a certain way that man makes it look when it lies.
Now, Göbekli Tepe was buried, right, 14,000 years ago, but that doesn't mean that the structure could be far older than that, if I remember correctly.
Yes, yeah. What they're trying to do is they say that there's two phases, what they believe, and it was actually between the 10th and 8th millennia is what they're giving it to. And they're saying, you're exactly right when you say that. It's the same as we've discussed when we talked about the Sphinx and things like that. This is saying that the dirt was filled in at that time. It's not saying that it was built at that time. It's just saying that the dirt was filled in around that time.
Right, which is crazy because it could be another 10,000 years older than that.
It could be, yeah. It very well could be. I get a kick out of thinking about that. But like you and I both discussed, we were happy to see when they find more links to these other civilizations, more things to back it up. And it seems like this is what that Kaharan has done. They said that there's even like these cupped holes in the stones. Like these stones have been big pillars, like cup marks that are not 100% sure what they were used for. But these big cup mark areas are found in this other place. They're found in Göbekli Tepe. They're found in Kaharan also. The really unique thing about Kaharan is it's not really an officially recognized tourist site. So like when you go there, you kind of have to go talk to the man that owns the land that it sits on, the family that owns it, to try to get welcomed onto the place. Now, the cool thing is of course, Hugh Newman and Andrew Collins, both of those guys have done amazing work whenever they've written about all these things. And they've actually been there and actually looked into it and been on the site. The really wild thing is I'll go back a little bit. I know I say the really wild thing because I get all freaked out. Kaharan was first discovered in 97. Now,
Göbekli Tepe was like 93 or
93, 94, right in there. And then 97, of course. Now, they said they surveyed it in 2000 and then again in 2001. So that's kind of gives you an idea. It's still about 30 miles outside the city, the same as Göbekli Tepe. So there's a lot of similarities to this that it just makes me think that it's a bigger thing. Now, the one little, when I say a bigger thing, that it wasn't just like a bunch of hunter-gatherers got together.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
That maybe this was a bigger, massive area. Like maybe like you said, maybe there's areas in this area that they haven't uncovered yet that's still even
in between
more.
The two. Like it's a huge metropolis.
It could be, yes. Now, they do know this, that they've done a little dating of the site of Kaharan, and they say some of it dates to about 8,500 BC. So from what they've dated there, it's not as old as Göbekli Tepe, but it's built with the same stylings, built with a lot of the same things. So it's kind of a lot like some of the areas in Egypt, that a lot of it was built with almost in common with its next door neighbor. Just throughout time, it's kind of like a whole nother culture was there that maybe have vanished after they built it. But
pillars and numerous amounts of concentric circles, right? And even at Göbekli Tepe, I think of the 20 that they know of, they've only uncovered 4 in the last 18 years.
Yeah. They haven't uncovered a whole lot of them now, and that's a funny thing too. I know that you don't have any patience whatsoever when it comes to something like that. No. I can't imagine.
I mean, are they using a toothbrush only? I mean, it's 18 years. They've only uncovered 4. Yeah. What are they doing?
Well, to be honest, you're never going to live to see them all uncovered, Kyle.
No, you're not. No. I've come to grips with that. Yeah,
you run a little too. You top out at a little too high speed, so you're going to blow a valve way before they ever get.
That's
all
right.
Of them
some cars are station wagons, some cars are dragsters. I just my fuel mixture is a little too lean.
Exactly. My thing is, I don't know that I could ever do it either, because I get a little crazy thinking about just right there and one more shovelful. What if there's like some pottery? What if there's remains? I don't think I've got the patience to take it. I would be a horrible.
It's like unwrapping gifts on Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how fast you go through wrapping paper because you can't wait to see what's in there.
Yeah, I'd be
Imagine just slowly taking a week to open it. I mean, there's no way.
Right. Oh, I would be horrible at it, and that's the reason that I talk on a microphone and laugh and sound like an idiot, because I can't do what they do. Now, folks, there's some great books out there on Göbekli Tepe. Andrew Collins has done an amazing job writing his book.
Yeah, the new book.
The new book is awesome. The same thing, Hugh Newman has done a ton of work with that megalithomania, and he's really put a lot of work into that. These guys have really, and I know that Graham Hancock has visited just not long ago.
Yeah, in fact, I saw a recent post by Graham, and he was kind of pissed off that they had built some kind of crazy awning over part of Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah,
and he was like, what are they doing?
Yeah, it doesn't look good. If you go and look at some of the photos of Göbekli Tepe that he had posted, it looks like they've, I think
he even referenced that he's glad that he at least saw it before they built that.
Yeah.
Monstrosity.
Yeah. It looks like a bungalow top they've put over it, or I don't know, a tabernacle they're building over it. It's not good. I mean, it's nothing at all good for business for that.
My favorite thing about Göbekli Tepe is it's not the amazing high relief carvings of animals and stuff on the sides and how it matches celestial calendars and things. My favorite thing is the fact that it's buried on purpose. So I don't know the reason why, but I like to daydream that somehow long ago, this advanced civilization, this advanced culture, they knew their days were numbered. They had known that an asteroid was coming. And their best way of saving their stuff for maybe a future generation, if anyone was able to survive, is they knew that they had to bury it. That's because why else would you bury it?
Yeah.
They knew it would be preserved.
Trying to save it from any kind of catastrophe.
And maybe that's what happened exactly when the asteroids hit. It caused the Great Flood and everything. That's why they did it. I don't know. I daydream about all the time when I read those stories about history. I guess that's my favorite part about history.
Yeah.
It's just trying to picture what was going on back then.
Trying to put yourself in their position and what it was like back then. Because I think about it as weather's changing, and it's maybe after an impact or something, and it's hard. People are barely surviving. There's not enough food. Things are getting thin, and this is a big shrine, or this is something where they have done a lot of worship. And in order for them, they look, it's just, we can't keep it going. We're not just going to close the doors to it. We're gonna save it as a time capsule. Hopefully,
right? Yeah, a time capsule. That's exactly.
Hopefully, somebody will find it for what it is, because it's strange that they don't find any. There's no burials. There's nothing like that there. It's just like you filled in a JCPenney's. You just covered it all up and said, I hope somebody finds it one day. And that's just, it's strange. It's almost sad to think about what was going through their minds whenever all the hard work that went into building that. And obviously whatever went on there really meant a lot to the people that were involved, be it good or be it bad. But it must have been very heartbreaking for the souls that were involved in covering it back.
Yeah,
up.
Absolutely. Just like when the World Trade Centers came down, there was numerous guys that had worked on it, on the original construction.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were sad because that was 10 years of their lives that went into building it or however long it was.
Mm-hmm.
Or even younger generations, they were sad. Like, my dad worked on that building or my grandpa worked on that building. Same thing. I could imagine they look at those carvings as they're filling them up with dirt and they're like, man, my dad built that. Or I remember my grandpa, he was one of the original carvers. He carved that lizard over there.
Yeah.
Now it's buried.
And then every shovelful you have to build it up. And then you're leaving. You know that once the job is done, that you're scattered to the wind. You have to leave. That's it. It's all over. It's a very, and that may not be at all what happened. But
that may not
what
be.
I picture in my mind.
That's what I like to picture. Maybe it was just some, overlord who hated their culture and buried it so that they couldn't pray there anymore. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
And like you were talking about, we're talking about daydreaming. You like to think about what it was like a long time ago. I'm tired of people always saying it must have been terrible to live a long time ago. They never had any food. You didn't have any clothes. Life was tough. Was it really? I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
It seems hard right now if they plucked you out of today and stuck you there. Yeah, it would be hard. But if you had grown up in that environment, and this guy was a blacksmith, and this guy was a farmer, and this guy was a leather worker, and you were brought up, and as a young boy, your dad worked in the leather shop, and you learned how to be a leather worker, and this group of people, these group of women ground corn, and this group of men went fishing every day. Would it really be that bad? If you think about a small knit community, it'd be just like you and all your friends, me and Bob and you and Steve and Monty and everybody.
Yeah.
We all live in the same little village. All our wives babysit all our kids. We know that Tuesday, me, you, and Steve, we got to go hunting. And we kill a deer. Food settled for the week. Next week, we got to rethatch Steve's house.
That's right.
And so we're doing that. But the thing is you're always with your family. You're always with your friends. You're not stuck in a cubicle. You're not in traffic. You're not working for what? To pay a mortgage on a house or to buy this pair of designer jeans.
Exactly.
Or, I need this cell phone. To me, I think I would be happier living a much simpler life. I mean, think about it. People have modern day jobs. You go on vacation to go camping, which is what? I'm going to set up camp. I'm going to fish. I'm going to take a nap in a hammock. The simpler life.
I'm going to stay awake till it
to
gets
me, that
dark
seems
outside.
more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And, just like you've recently cut off your cable and you only watch Roku now and stuff. At first, it's terrible. You're like, man, I miss it. But after a while, you get assimilated to it. And you're like, you know what? I don't know what I was doing wasting all my time watching all that garbage.
You find that, yeah, you're right. I would much rather, I love to listen to the podcast. I love to do research. I love to I get online and there's so much more out there than being stuck in front of that television. And it gives you time to get outside while it's daylight. Do anything, take up any kind of little hobby you want to. Learn to carve soap, whatever. Just something to get out and keep your mind active and stay active.
Yeah, and
so
unless there's a catastrophe, maybe food's not a big worry.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got huge amounts of agricultural or crops growing and you got tons of fish and you go, these guys are really crack shots with their bow and there's plenty of deer and stuff around here and everybody shares as a village, we've always got food. We've always got daycare. And I think relationships are probably a lot better. You're not going to cheat on somebody's wife when there's only 6 of you because you guys all grew up together.
Yeah.
You're so close that nothing's going to happen like that. There's no fights because you know everybody.
Everything, it's more of a family environment.
I think that's the way human beings were originally designed. That's the way we're supposed to be living.
I think so. We're supposed to be living a lot closer to this world, or a lot more closer, I believe, to this planet than what we are. And here we are talking on this crazy bunch of everything. And yeah, sometimes, I mean, I love it. I love getting on there. I love
I love technology. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, people always like, well, you don't have medicines, you don't live as long and all that. I'm like, but you don't know that. If you didn't know how long you were meant to live and you were just born, you would just live.
Yeah, everybody only lives to 45.
Yeah. You put a time.
But those 45 years probably are really awesome.
Well, I think of the time limit. We put a time limit on everything, and everybody's like, oh, I'm going to, just like we were laughing with you. And I said, you're going to burn out and all that stuff. There's no time limit. You're not supposed to live every day like there's a time limit.
Well, you can't, though, in the modern world. You have to do stuff.
But you can. You can live every day like it's your last. Like tell people that you love them. Give people
like a country song or something.
Well, no, yeah, right. But I mean,
I know what you're saying.
That's the whole thing, is just live every day like it is. It's kind of like a gift, and that's the way I try to learn a little something every day, and I try to make sure the people that I care about know every day. And it's a much better thing. But I'm with you. Is sometimes, man, you look around. I know whenever we've all gone camping or gone on hunting trips or been up in the mountains or anything, you're just like, you know what? This is what it was.
How easy is this? Me and the boys caught 6 fish this morning. I'm going to take a nap under this tree. I'm just whittling for an hour, not doing nothing.
Yeah, right?
This is pretty nice.
It's pretty good. This is the good life.
You know, and you sit there and think, would I like to live to 80 on pharmaceutical drugs, or could I just live like this and not have to go back to work on Monday, do this for another 25 years? I might choose the 25-year route.
If you told me I could live carefree in the outdoors with my family and all my friends, and we fished and we hunted and we grew little crops and we just whatever, we just stayed in the beautiful outdoors, and I was going to live there to be 55 years old.
Yeah.
That was it. That's drawing the line. 55 is not very old, and they said 55 years old. Or you can live and you don't have to work till you're 55, and then you can retire maybe 65, and you'll live to be 85. And the last 5 years of your life may be kind of rough. I would choose the 55 in the outdoors.
Yeah.
It's quality of life to me and not quantity.
Well, you're right. You always think that they're hustling every day for their living. I think there's a lot of downtime in those civilizations. A lot of downtime. Sitting around smoking the peace pipe, doing the ayahuasca and stuff. And then at 55, we just take Cam out and put him out to pasture. We get a club. You're like, look, man, that limp it's got to go. So say your goodbyes tonight.
Yeah.
Or maybe we don't tell you. Yeah, look, what's up in that tree? And then we just that's right. Yep. It's not so bad, right?
I wouldn't have a problem.
Do you want to know it's
that.
coming or not know it's coming?
I don't really care.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of death. A lot of folks get all freaked out about it. I'm not afraid of it, not one bit.
No, I don't think I am. I'm worried about the people I leave behind.
Yes.
But as far as me, no, I don't. I'm not worried.
I'm not afraid about it. It's just another step, and I'm curious. And I'm like, you know what? When this is over, where are we going next, man?
I try to be a good person all the time. If you're only being a good person because you're afraid of upsetting somebody upstairs, then that's really not a good life.
You need to try harder.
No, that's for sure. Well, I appreciate you sharing that story. That was pretty awesome.
I love the history, man. I love the history. All right. Kyle, you got to tell me, you were kind of teasing me along a little bit that you had some Bigfoot news for me out of Kentucky. What have you found?
Yes, sir. I know people love to hear the Bigfoot stories, and this comes from one of my favorite websites, cryptozoology.com. And this is in Bedford, Kentucky. Members of the Northern Kentucky Bigfoot Research Group, a group dedicated to learning more about the cryptid, claimed that it inhabits the woods of the Bluegrass State.
Nice.
The group's founder, Tom Shea, says that he can remember incidents going back all the way to the early 1960s. They even had a large monster hunt in Trimble County. Now, he says, they called it the Thing. Several people saw it. They saw it looking in windows. They even saw it kill a calf. That summer was terrifying for this community.
What is it?
I don't know. I just thought I would add that effect. Not good? No good?
Okay.
He also claims to have seen the creature once, as it was standing on the side of the road. He thought it was a hitchhiker at first, but then he realized he was looking at something similar to a primate. This thing was covered in hair. It had to stand at least 7.5 foot tall.
Yikes.
It was walking, and I got out of my car. I got a flashlight. I followed it into the field, and as I was following it, it turned and growled. I stopped dead in my tracks and said, "What am I doing here?" and ran off. I have seen it, and and I don't have to argue with you, because that's between me and my Creator. I have seen it. 100% convinced. I can tell you they exist, and there's no doubt in my mind, and we will eventually have enough proof. There's no doubt they exist. Now, other people in the research group have also seen the creature recently, and more than once. Rodney Adams, who believes the wilderness of Trimble County is the ideal place for Bigfoot to live. And here's a little clip of him.
Rodney Adams, member of the Northern Kentucky Bigfoot Research Group, says the small streams and lakes and dense forests of Trimble County are also an ideal home for Bigfoot. Adams knows they are there because he's come face to face with more than one.
It had hair all over its body other than the face itself. It looked more human than ape-like. It had a very large, flat nose, a very wide, pronounced nose. There was also a very ominous odor. Kind of smells like rotten garbage and wet dog all kind of mixed together.
The pictures may not be so clear, but their memories are vivid. Now, decades later, Shea and Adams have collected hundreds of footprint casts, blood, and hair.
One of our experts classified it as an unknown primate. Their DNA comes back fairly close to ours, but when they reference it across the database of known creatures, they still don't know what it is. It comes back unknown.
Shay and Adams are not driven to prove that Bigfoot, or the Trimble County monster, is real.
I have seen it, and I don't have to argue with you, because that's between me and my Creator.
Their goal is to learn about the creature and share what they have discovered with others.
I've seen it, 100% convinced. I can tell you they exist, and there's no doubt in my mind. And we will eventually have enough proof. There's no doubt that they exist.
So he's not, he knows that they exist.
Look, I love it, but the only thing I have is when he starts talking about the DNA. I'm like, who did he really give it to?
Well, it's nearly as similar as a human, but aren't a lot of things nearly similar to humans?
I mean, you're nearly similar to a human.
Right? I mean, I think even dogs are pretty close.
I don't know, but I just know, is it Sykes that's been doing all the DNA stuff and bringing it all out? They didn't give it to him? I mean, you know what I mean? He's the guy that's the go-to guy now.
Well, they got their own guy working on it.
I just wonder. It makes me wonder. Is Kentucky also where they grow that ginseng? Remember that show? There was a show a while back.
Yeah, you might be right.
They were growing ginseng, and I just wonder if that's where it's up in there, too. Maybe Bigfoot's drawn to ginseng.
I don't know. It says the state of Kentucky has reported an unusual number of Bigfoot sightings this year. This last March, 2014, a child said he had seen a creature that looked like a monkey staring at him through a window outside of his home.
No, thank you.
Well, I woke up in the bed, and I heard 4 tapping at the window right there. And I went over and looked at it, and I saw Bigfoot's face, and I was staring at it. It was looking at me, and I jumped up and I ran. And then when I came back earlier, it was gone.
Well, so you were laying in the bed, you say, right? When you first heard the tapping, and
Yep.
what'd you do? Did you sit up in the bed and look at it? Did you
Yes.
run over to the window and look at it?
Sit up in the bed.
And you saw what did the face look like?
Well, it looked like a Bigfoot's face. It looked like a monkey out the window, like an ape.
Like an ape? Did you see its eyes, nose, mouth, anything like that?
Yeah.
Wrinkles on it? Anything?
It had wrinkles on its forehead. It had brown eyes. And his mouth was closed, and it was looking at me.
Okay. I like the kid's story, but, kids have a good imagination. And could the kid have been watching Finding Bigfoot with his dad all night long and then just had a dream? You know what I mean? Because the kid's like 10. You could talk to my sons that are 7, and they can describe what a Sasquatch looks like, even though they've never seen one.
Yeah.
So maybe just has an overactive imagination. Says, oh, man, I woke up last night, I heard tapping, and I saw a Sasquatch looking in the window.
Didn't they tell us that somebody got killed right behind the house here?
Yeah,
Remember that one? One was
a were-man.
A were-man. He's a wolf that turns into a man.
That's right.
A were-man killed somebody.
It's the complete reverse. It's not a person that turns into a wolf. It's a regular wolf that turns into a guy.
He turns into a were-man.
But it's just like that. It sounds like the dad's kind of coaching him along, too. Now, what did you say it looked like?
You said it looked like an ape? Yeah.
I'm not saying the kid's lying. I'm just saying, I don't know if you should believe every story a 10-year-old tells you he saw.
Yeah, right.
All
I say is this. You
right?
smell that? It smells a little funny.
Well, also, in May of this year, there was a man from Jenkins, Kentucky, claimed he had an encounter with a beast that made his legs shake. Tim, who does not want his last name revealed, said that he was out deer scouting in the woods around Letcher County when he witnessed the animal. And I quote, "I was in a hollow called Dark Hollow, coming off the top ridge, what is known as Pine Ridge, at the end of an old logging mining road. Just as I was about to step off of an embankment to the logging mining road, I heard a loud whoosh sound. So loud, I'm sure my eyes crossed, and short moments later, another whoosh. So I yelled as loud as I could, wanting to warn whatever it was that I was there. So thinking it possibly might be a bear or an elk or even a big cat, I shot around from my .30-30, trying to shoo it along its merry way. And again I heard whoosh. I then shot a third time, letting the animal know that I wasn't there to play. And then I called my brother to ask for some help. But my brother was trick-or-treating with his daughter, so he couldn't make it out to help me.
He left him hanging out, man.
So he decided it was time to get in his own vehicle. And he said when I got in there, my legs were shaking as I backed away from the direction of the whooshing sound. I kept the embankment between me and this creature and looked back about 50 yards with blurry, watery eyes and seen the thing just standing there upon the arrival of my vehicle. It stood around 7 feet tall, and it looked like it was about 400 pounds. It was dark brown in color and had no muscular or body features. So just like a brown blob, I guess. So they've been having a lot of these sightings in Kentucky in this last year of 2014. So it's pretty crazy. Now, weren't you telling me that you just had a story of a recent sighting here in Texas?
Yeah. Now, this is something that really got me going on this thing because it actually comes from a good friend of ours, Mike Mays, the Texas Cryptid hunter.
Oh, okay.
And it was actually on the NAWAC, the North American Wood Ape Conservancy, is where it was actually filed. Folks, not far from me and Kyle, south from where we are here in the DFW area, in between Austin and San Antonio, kind of, I guess you could say it would be southeast of Austin, so northeast of San Antonio, is a place, it's Gonzales County. And Gonzales County has a state park in it called the Palmetto State Park. And to give you an idea of what the Palmetto State Park would even look like is, if any of you have ever seen I guess it's the newest movie, Predators.
Predators. So not part 2 with Danny Glover.
No. Predators, the one with Adrian Brody.
Okay.
All right. Some of that was actually filmed in Palmetto State Park. The movie was shot in there. So that gives you an idea of what it actually looks like around there.
And what is the deal with Predator in Texas? I mean, if you look at the credits from Predator 1, the original Predator movie.
Mm-hmm. I know where you're going.
At the end of the movie, it'll say knives made in Weatherford, Texas, which is where we're at. Mm-hmm. I remember meeting that guy, Jack Crane, when I was a kid. He came to the elementary school and showed us all the knives that he made for the movie. And I was like, man, that is awesome.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah. So I don't know. It's funny that they're tied. It's kind of like it is. It's tied in here, a little synchronicity of how it's tied in.
I thought it was filmed like in South America. That's what it looks like, right?
Well, yeah. Well, that was the whole thing is when I first read this story that Mike had up, I was like, man, I just kind of went to looking back in the Palmetto State Park. Because what's funny is my wife and I had talked about going here at one time.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to stop by there, and we were coming back from like down around San Marcos and all that. And we were going to come through, and we said, you know what? Let's run over there and check this out because it's supposed to look really wild. It's kind of surrounded by swampy areas and all that. Well, I guess that's exactly what the people had done that had this sighting or had this happen to them. I'll tell you what I'll do right quick. I'll give you a little rundown that come from the book Weird Texas. All right, now let me read this to you. Now you can find this book, of course, on Amazon. Like I said, it's called Weird Texas, and it says your travel guide to Texas local legends and best kept secrets. And a little part of that come out called Bizarre Beasts. Now, we have the Lake Worth Monster not far from us. We've had several strange things go on, but this is a little part of that book. It's called The Invisible Man of Palmetto State Park. The story, it's from an anonymous man that sent this in, but it says, many years back, my wife gave me a camera for Christmas. I took pictures everywhere and spending a lot of time photographing in Palmetto State Park near Austin. It says, one time I had been out roaming around, and on my way back to the truck, I felt like someone was following me. He said, I turned around, but there was not a person in sight. He says, I quickened my pace, but things only got worse. He says, soon I could hear footsteps behind me and off to the side. He said, all I could think, if I could just make the car, I kept telling myself, and everything will be fine. He says, no one else was around. Unfortunately, he says, I was completely spooked, and I broke out into a full run, tripped at one point, landed on my face, and then rolled over, sat up, and looked back down the trail. He says, I couldn't believe what I saw. Or more accurately, I couldn't believe what I didn't see. He said, what I did see was in the tall grass off to the side of the trail getting flattened and parting as if someone was pushing their way through it. But there was no one there. He says, I jumped up and broke out into a full sprint until I was inside my car. So I quickly took off without even catching my breath and felt something hit the car from behind as I sped off. He says, I thought for a long time that I had gone completely insane, but apparently there are many stories of an invisible man who lives in the park. Said it made me feel better, even a bit proud. I am one of the few who encountered it firsthand. Said, I guess I don't need to tell you this, but I did not get a shot of it with my new camera, is what he says. So he's claiming it was like an invisible man, okay?
So is that ghost? is it Sasquatch or is it in fact Predator?
Right?
I mean,
is it the
I don't
Predator
know
that's
the
down there?
story.
Yeah. Well, there's another one, like we said, on the cryptozoologist web. You can go on, and there's stories where people have talked about seeing a few things in this Palmetto State Park, so much so that they've actually kind of nicknamed it. Even the people in the park. See, the Texas Parks and Wildlife's official stance is that this stuff doesn't exist, okay?
Sasquatch you're talking about.
Sasquatch isn't real, it's misidentification, it's things like that. Well, except when you go to this park, they've got T-shirts and coffee mugs and posters and things like that, and they call it swampy.
Really? So
Yeah.
officially they deny it.
Officially they deny it, but they're making a little bit of money off of it. So, and there's some different, like I said, there's some different stories that have been told from down in this area right quick. I'll read you one. Okay, now this comes from the book called Ghost Stories of Texas, and it was written by a local historian here in Texas named William Edward Sires. And he actually wrote it about, I believe, an interview that he actually did with a man named Berthold Jackson. And Jackson's an A&M graduate and grew up hunting all through Texas and all that stuff. And he actually had an encounter with what they call the Thing, which is like what I was telling you about, like the Invisible Man.
This is at the same Palmetto National Park?
The same area,
Okay.
yeah. They're in Gonzales. And he says, Jackson said he was hunting with a good friend of his named Johnny Boehm from Gonzales. And he says, Johnny was behind me maybe 50 yards. And he said, I could see his light and he could see mine. And he said, the Thing got right in between us. He said, we could see the brush move. And he said he gestured with a rippling movement of passage. And he said, we could hear brush snap underfoot, but we couldn't see a thing except the brush moving. He said, not the thing itself, and that close, an animal's eyes would be glowing. And he said, we said that, he said they never could actually ever see it. And he said, I even put a big light on it more than once, really shined a lot of the light on, nothing. They never could find anything.
No eye shine, no nothing.
No, nothing. And they said Jackson also named several others that had an encounter with the Thing from there in Gonzales, and said two men, Billy Webb and Ab Ursey, was running a trot line one night and saw an expanse of blood weeds along the riverbank moving as if something large were passing through it. And he said they said they were following them. They had a big light, said they weren't 20 foot from the bank. They still didn't see anything of all this. So, I mean, it's really, and what's funny is they started kind of nicknaming it the Damned Thing. And, of course, that comes from a book from Ambrose Bierce wrote a book called The Damned Thing, and it's, about an invisible monster. So it was funny that they kind of start throwing that up. So that gets into the encounter that just happened, like recent. Like we're talking in June of this year is another little encounter that happened. So I told you kind of what it looks like. Everyone that hasn't seen Predators with Adrian Brody, it looks a lot kind of like almost like the Florida Everglades, the way it looks, kind of swampy around there. It's outside of, like I said, Austin and San Antonio. To give you an idea, the San Marcos River runs through it, and it's named after the dwarf palmetto plants. So that kind of gives you an idea of what's through there. And it actually has a lake. They have Oxbow Lake, which is only a little 4-acre lake. It was initially created by floodwater, but now it's actually spring fed. It's dammed up. It's spring fed. So they were spring water there. It just flooded, filled up. Then they kind of dammed it all up, and that's where it is. Now it's surrounded by a ton of real dense swamps, kind of real dense vegetation. Like I said, you remember the movie. That's what it looks like around there. It's real thick.
I thought it was South America.
Yeah, it's kind of, and that's what it looks like stuck right there. Now, it was actually started, it was privately owned until it was bought by the city of Gonzales in 1934. And it was opened in 36 as a park. Now, to give everybody an idea, it's only 270 acres. That's it. So it's not like massive amounts of land. It's just kind of like a good little plot of land right in the middle of some swampy area is kind of what it is. So like I said, it was, it's the civil conservation group there, or the Corps, whatever. They're the ones that built it and turned it up into what it was and made it into kind of more of a park for families to come walk. And it's got barbecue pits. It's got everything like a typical park would have.
Right.
Well, this couple was actually on their way home from New Braunfels back in June. And the observation that comes from the NAWAC, comes from the North American Wood Ape Conservancy's website. This is what it says. It says, my husband and I decided to go to Palmetto State Park on our way home from New Braunfels and enjoy a nice hike. It says, we began our hike at the beginning of the San Marcos River Trail. We were the only ones on the trail that day. At the beginning of our hike, my husband noticed what looked like an extremely large footprint to the left of the trail. So we didn't think much of it and kept on our journey. We came to a spot where you can walk down to the river and swim or fish. She says we both walked down the bank of the river to check out the spot, and after taking a small break, we started back up the bank. Says I was in front of him when I heard him holler that somebody had just thrown a large rock at him. Says I thought he was trying to scare me, so I didn't pay much attention. When we got to the top of the bank to the trail, he told me that something had thrown a large baseball-sized rock at him, which hit right behind him in the sand and rolled down the hill. And she said he was visibly upset. Says we continued on our hike, and while on the San Marcos River Trail, we continued to hear noises in the woods and breaking sticks, but contributed it to local wildlife. And then she goes on to says, then we heard a strange howl. Yeah, and it says it was similar to that of a cow, but different. Now, she says, I know there are cows in the area, which we have heard and saw many times during the hike. But I know what a cow sounds like, and my husband grew up around and currently works in the slaughter business. So he has heard every sound a cow can make. He says, what we heard was not a cow. We heard this howl, she says, once while on the San Marcos River Trail, and then again when we cut off onto the Mesquite Flats Trail. And while on the Mesquite Flats Trail, we continued to be observant of our surroundings, but enjoy our relaxing hike. She says, somewhere on the trail not far past one bridge before another, we both heard a loud crack and falling of a large limb out of a tree by the end of the first bridge on the trail we had just crossed. It says, we then heard running through the woods, but it was not like a person running, but it was also not like a deer. It was a loud thump sound when whatever it was hit the ground. She said, my eyes immediately scanned the tree line and focused on a tall black, and she says, she quotes, something. Says, I could clearly see the thing past and into behind the trees. She said it was tall and black, but very fast. It was faster than a person. It was not a deer because she said I could see its silhouette. It was not long. It was not a hog because it was tall and not long like an animal. She said I was watching it pass through the trees when it just disappeared like it had stopped or something. She says I was in shock by what I had just seen. My husband and I walked back to where the limb had hit the ground to see if we could see anything. Unfortunately, we didn't have any binoculars. She says, but off in the distance where the thing disappeared from my sight, it appeared to be some type of black thing either crouched or standing completely beside a tree, standing still. She said we decided it was best to make our way back to the trail and head to the end, but we kept watching the black thing we saw by the tree. She says the trees got thick and we couldn't see through for a moment, and then we got to another opening, and we attempted to find the black thing by the tree we had just seen, and it was no longer there. She said we continued our walk with a lot to talk about, and once we crossed into the Otine Swamp Trail, we heard the howl again, but closer and clearer than before. She said we completed our hike with no other incidences or noises, and it was the strangest thing I had ever seen in my life. Now, that's the trail she gives. Now, like I said, Mike went and actually sat down and investigated. And, and we've had him on the show before.
Yeah, we've had him on like twice.
Yeah. Now, he actually sat down and talked to him about what went on, and it all took place around 1 p.m., and there was rain showers off and on. It was hot and muggy. I mean, you know what it normally is in June, or this past June, actually. So it was June 8th is when it all went down. And they even talked about the track that they saw. They told him about the track that they saw off to the side of the trail. And they said it measured approximately 16 inches in length. And the husband even commented that was one big boy whenever he saw that track.
Yeah.
So they saw some things, but like most people, if you don't go into it thinking, oh, it's going to be a Bigfoot, oh, this is what I'm going to see, you may not think anything of it. You're just like, oh, it's somebody's big bare foot. You're out here.
Yeah, you're 100% right.
For folks that don't know, down around New Braunfels and things, everybody goes down there on the summer times to float the Guadalupe River, the Comal River.
Right.
They go down to Schlitterbahn, which is a naturally water-fed water park that comes up out of the river. I mean, everybody goes down there. I mean, in the summertime, it's like spring break every week.
Yeah, because it's hot, in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And the water's really cold because it's spring fed. So the water's only like 65 degrees.
And it is. It's really like spring break. They party down there. In fact, I think they just set a record a few weeks ago in Guinness World Records down there for the most people on floating a river during the time of a concert or something. I mean, it's madness down there as far as that. So for people to be running around barefoot and splashing in and out of the water anywhere you go, that's just normal sight any and everywhere you go.
But this wasn't near any people, though, right?
No. But that's what I'm just saying. You wouldn't think anything of it if you saw a bare footprint. Even a great big one, in the mud or something, you may not think a whole lot of it. So it's not like instantly you see a barefoot track and you're like, oh, wait a minute.
I don't know. I just saw the most recent episode of Finding Bigfoot, and they had what they thought was juvenile footprints next to a river. And I'm like, couldn't it just be children's
juvenile
footprints?
Or juvenile Bigfoot? What are they saying?
Well, they were claiming it was Bigfoot, but I'm like, it could be just kids. They're like, no, there's no way there would be kids down by the water, not here.
Yeah.
Like, really?
That's the perfect example. That's it. But
you're talking about a 16-inch footprint, so that's big, totally different.
But still, you wouldn't be thinking that. You would just be thinking, oh, there it is. So apparently this couple, that they went down through there and saw this and then had this happen to them. And even the woman said, even like when Mike had spoken to her, said that the black figure was running at breakneck speed from her right to her left away from the trail. And she described it as jet black and ungodly fast. And she said she was positive that what she saw was upright and bipedal. But she was mainly taken back by the speed of the figure, of how fast it was. And he even, in his review here, it says that the female witness described the figure as massive.
Really?
Yeah, so man, I guess my thing is this. It's not that far from us, really. That's going to have to be a weekend trip coming up. We're going to.
I'm not going down there. Are you kidding me?
I'm going. We're going to have to wheel down there, check this stuff out. The really wild thing of the whole story, I guess, that I think is really wild is the fact that they immediately went into the park headquarters to report what they saw.
Yeah.
And the rangers are like, man, we get reports like that all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that's what's incredible. They're not officially acknowledging it.
Yeah.
But yet they all kind of know that people have these sightings all the time.
Yeah.
Man, that is cool.
And what's the cool thing, too, is it's not like a big place. We're not talking about, like I've said, we're not talking about thousands and thousands of acres. We're talking about a few hundred acres. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And this is one of those things that if somebody was really, of course, I know it's the state and all that stuff. Why isn't somebody down there really trying to research it unless the state maybe not allowing them to really get in there and dig around?
I don't know, man. That's what I always wonder about. They always have these stories or these TV programs where they're like, oh, yeah, we know they're in there. Well, then stay there.
Yeah.
Why do they always like Finding Bigfoot again?
Well,
they always say, oh, we know they're definitely here, but next week we're going to Ohio. Why leave?
Yeah.
If you want to find it, stay there till you find it.
Well, that's what I really like about this is I don't know a lot of people that do the reports and all that stuff. We know Gary and we know Mike, but I know how thorough Mike is. Great guy. And he's a no BS kind of guy.
The same thing with Gary. I mean, he's very serious about it.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of what drew me to it is I was like, man, Mike doesn't mess around. When he goes down there, if it's something that really piqued his interest, it has to be something legit.
He's not going to post anything on his website. That's
no.
Yes.
So you can go. It's texascryptidhunter.blogspot.com, or you can also go to the NAWAC's website, which is just an acronym for the North American Wood Ape Conservancy. But you can go there. You can find all this. But this legitimately happened not 4.5, 5 hours, not even that probably. Let's just say, not knowing where you're going, it would take you about 4.5 hours to get there from right here. And that happened back in June 8th of this year is when all this stuff went down. So I'm going to have to, man, I may do it on the show. I don't know now that I've discussed it. I may just call Mike on my own. I may holler at Mike tomorrow or sometime in the upcoming few weeks and have him give me a rundown on it and see what he thought about it.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Because I'd like to run by and meet Mike and us run down there and take a look at it. Him show me where this all went down and stuff would be pretty cool.
That would be fun.
Well, all right, Brad. Well, that's my Bigfoot story, but I don't know what's gotten into you, man, but it seems like you've got something for the Bluegrass State today. You've got some of these Kentucky stories for me. So what have you Kentuckied up this time? Some Kentucky Fried what?
Yeah, well, it just happened to work out that way with the news story about the Kentucky Bigfoot and stuff. And this was a book that was donated to us by a listener, and it's called The Tragedy at Devil's Hollow and Other Kentucky Ghost Stories. And I thought this story was pretty neat out of there, so I wanted to read it to everybody out there. I read it a couple weeks ago, actually, but it's pretty intriguing. And this is called The Vanishing Bird Family. And it goes like this. About 1900, a family considered to be a very strange and weird family by few isolated neighbors lived on a high point above the North Fork of the Kentucky River. There were 9 members in this family, and they lived in a large log house built in an unusual oblong fashion. They made no friends and allowed no one except the family to enter their home. On occasion, people passing along the road in front of this dwelling could hear screams and a flapping sound, such as a large winged bird might make. There were also sounds of high-pitched voices and the sound of blows, such as might be heard if a person were being beaten. At night, a passerby in Williams Creek might hear the splash, as if a large object were being dropped into the water. The sound was always heard near this house. No one ever saw any lights at night, and no smoke was ever seen coming from the chimney. Eventually, the sounds from this house became the talk of a few families living upstream. Years passed, and a graveyard appeared on the hill behind the house, although no neighbors had ever heard of a death or a burial in the family. Several years after it was first noticed, the graveyard had grown to contain over 50 small tombstones made of plain creek rock. Strangely, it appeared there were still 9 members in the family. They were seen separately at various times in the local village, some 2 miles away, where they purchased only bare necessities, but they always bought some type of grain. Not only did they appear to be the same individuals, but they seemed never to grow any older. They were physically small, and the few people who ever saw them up close swore their faces resembled those of birds, with long noses and receding chins. They all walked with a quick, jerky kind of step, spoke in high-pitched voices, and always wore gloves or long coats. After about 10 years, curiosity got the best of a group of men, and they made plans to check on the actions of this strange family. They wanted some explanations. How did they live? They did very little farming and owned no farm animals. Why did they seem to never age? Why did a cemetery continue to grow when there were no known deaths in the family? Before going to talk to the odd family, though, the men checked on travelers who were known to have used the road. They found no reports of missing people, violence, or any deaths. On a clear, moonlit night, about 50 men assembled to visit the unusual family. They formed 2 groups so they could approach the house from different directions. One group reached the front yard as the other came into the backyard, and all were amazed to see 9 large birds fly away from the rooftop of the house. They entered the large dwelling to find nothing but piles of straw, resembling huge birds' nests. No furniture, clothes, tools, or other human necessities were found. The next morning, the men investigating the graveyard, they opened some 20 graves and found small human skeletons. The skeletons revealed an amazing trait, however, never before seen by any of those present. Each had 2 large extra bones along the shoulder. This seemed to indicate that while the bodies appeared human, they had somehow developed the ability to fly. The bones were hollow, like those of birds, and some of the first bodies to be buried had completely disintegrated. Before leaving, the men burned the house, and the area was avoided after that. What kind of creatures were these? Where had they come from? Where did they go? The number of graves would indicate that an impossible birth rate for a normal human family. Might the sounds of objects being dropped into the large creek have been eggs that would not hatch? A bird will often throw up out of the nest, especially with an unhatched shell, eggs that don't hatch. All traces of the house's foundation, the cemetery, and the bridge are now gone, and only slight indentations above the river show where the old road used to be. Today, on the high point of land where the dwelling stood, some unusual blackbirds are occasionally seen. They are exceptionally large and seem reluctant to fly away. They watch and follow people who come near. At times, it seems they are trying to speak. Now, the author notes his grandmother was born in 1877, and she heard this story firsthand from neighbors who were among the men who exhumed the bodies of the bird people and helped burn down the house. She and other elderly persons told me the story when I was about 15 years old. Is that not crazy?
That is an insane story.
Insane, right? I have no idea if it's real, but it's a creepy story.
That story is creepy as hell.
Right?
But
Some kind of crazy bird people.
It's just a big nest.
Yep, that's all it was.
Man, I don't know if I'm not digging that at all right there, man. That is creepy. Well, folks, that pretty much wraps up the show for this week. I got a few shout-outs and stuff I would like to throw out there. I'd like to tell James Corbet, thanks for emailing the show. And Don O'Malley, thank you. And Sergio from Portugal, thank you so much for emailing the show. And PJ, thanks so much for sending me in the information on the Soloway First Spaceman photo, folks. I did a little thing about that with the MIBs, and then PJ sent me some stuff showing that it had actually been debunked, that photo, that it was actually the child's mother in the background and not a spaceman. So then it brings back the whole idea that the father telling the Men in Black story might have been pulling somebody's leg. So that whole thing may have unraveled.
Yeah.
And we'd like to get a few shout-outs from a few of the reviews that we've gotten on iTunes. We'd like to thank Hayden, D79. Thank you, sir. We'd like to thank Kid Kool-Aid for writing one. And we have a special one we'd like to thank. We'd like to thank Pod Tom.
Yeah.
Pod Tom gave us a review and gave us some constructive criticism, which me and Kyle don't mind any kind of criticism whatsoever.
No way.
If it's constructive, we'll take it to heart. And he pointed out or made a really good point. And what he said is he doesn't understand why we were doing musical breaks in the show. And me and Kyle both looked at each other and we were like, man, he's got a great point. We don't know why either. So when it's the show of just Kyle and I, we're not doing them anymore. We don't have any commercials to play. We don't really have any messages to put out. So we're not going to do the music. We're just going to let it flow. You're going to hear Pretty Lights music at the beginning of the show and at the end of the show. You'll always get that. Now, when we do an interview, we're going to have a music break going into the interview and coming out of the interview. But when it shows of me and Kyle, we're just going to let it fly. So, Pod Tom, thanks for pointing out something that was staring us in the face and we had no idea. So
right?
We're going to fix it, man. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So, yeah, I guess it's like what me and Kyle call, we're just going to trim the fat, try to streamline some things. And
yeah, we're making changes here all the time. We didn't know. We started doing that because we thought that's the way radio shows are supposed to do.
Yeah.
We've never done a radio show before, so we were just winging it, folks.
We're just going with it, yeah.
It is. It's ridiculous, so we're getting rid of it.
Yeah. What do you got for me, Philly?
Well, I was just going to let everybody know, if you're listening on Dark Matters Radio or iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you're at, that we have a website, expandedperspectives.com. And just to let you know that we did launch it. Expanded Perspectives Elite has launched. So if you like the normal show that you're hearing on Mondays, you can join Elite and get an additional show every Thursday. If you go to expandedperspectives.com, in the top right corner, you'll see a big black box that says Expanded Perspectives Elite. Click on that. It's got some easy information there with PayPal and stuff, and it's $5 a month or $55 a year. And what you're going to get is an additional show. We're not hiding interviews. There's no special bells and whistles. We're always going to make the interviews free for people on Mondays, just like that. But if you like the show on Monday and you would like to hear more, it's exactly what it's going to be on Thursday. Same length, same format, same thing. So if you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, no problem. If you have any cool shows, or not shows, if you have any cool stories or ideas you want to share with Expanded Perspectives, go to our email us, expandedperspectives@yahoo.com. If you want to follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, same thing. You can follow me and Cam individually, or you can follow the show, or you can follow all three, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. So we hope everybody has a really good week. Don't work too hard. Be nice to people. Give somebody a hug. Tell them you love them. Drive safe. You know the deal.
Everybody just take care of each other. And for those of you who signed up, we'll see y'all Thursday. And for everybody else, I guess we will see y'all Monday. Everybody be careful.
Peace.